For the workplace of tomorrow, presented by XByte, Dell Technologies, and VMware. Today, we really want to make this as interactive as possible. I want to make sure that your questions drive a lot of what we discuss today. My name is Ben Marquis. I'm your host today. In just a moment, we're going to be dropping in a poll out to you guys to give you a minute or so to complete that, just to kind of find out, what you know about VDI, and we'll tailor the content depending on the feedback we get. So I'm going to go ahead and give everybody about a minute to complete that poll. All right, I'm just going to give everybody a couple more seconds and then we'll get moving here. All right, looks like everybody's completed the poll. Appreciate your feedback there. Just to go over our agenda today really quick, obviously you guys we want you to submit questions in the chat as they come up, or at the end of our presentation today. For those of you who don't know who XByte is, my name is Ben Marquis. I'm a HCI Cloud and Storage Systems Engineer here at XByte Technologies. I'm joined today by Larry McKeon, VMware Solutions Engineer. XByte Technologies has been in business for 20 years. We're headquartered down in Bradenton, Florida. We are an EMC Gold partner and VMware Enterprise partner. What kind of sets us apart from a lot of the other vendors you might deal with is that we inventory thousands of Dell server chassis. We're able to stock to build vSAN clusters. We have parts to build out compatible servers. So we just had a customer moving from a 3-tier infrastructure and converting some R630s to vSAN ready nodes. So that's something we're able to do. We can configure to order and ship in anywhere from between 1 and 3 business days, which usually saves you on average about 3 weeks to even upwards to 2 months over buying brand new. A warranty would be a full Dell warranty and support, and we also have the ability to do parts uplift for your current servers. Our pricing, we do volume purchasing, which equals lower pricing. We own our stock, so we do not, have to adhere to the OEM's pricing model. A good example of that is below for 3.8 terabyte SSD drives. You can see there's a huge. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to Larry, and he's going to go over VMware Workspace ONE and Horizon.
Hey, thanks, Ben. Hey, everyone. Larry McEwen. I'm a solution engineer with VMware, and I'm based down here in Orlando, Florida. I'm part of our DSAT group in the VMware channel team, where I work a lot with the Dell EMC folks out in the field. So pleasure to be here. Thanks for everyone for joining. Wanted to talk a little bit, begin the story with, what we are seeing, in the field today from a lot of our customers. due to the recent COVID-19 crisis that we've all been experiencing here the last 2.5 months or so. We even before all of that started, we had a lot of CIOs, a lot of folks on the business side that had set certain priorities for their business, and they were moving towards a journey, whether it was a software defined data center or whatever. Security seemed to be very top of mind for a lot of folks, due to a lot of hacks, especially at the state and local government. But on a drop of a dime, a lot of those priorities had changed due to the COVID-19 crisis or crisis. So, a good example of how those priorities changed is, here in Florida, we had Broward County, one of the largest counties here in Florida. Not only that, but the county that had the most COVID-19 positive cases here in the state as well. And this was all new to them. They put out to their employees, hey, we still need you to come into work. But if we understand, health comes first. But if you're not going to come in, we need you to take some vacation time, or sick time until we get this straightened out. And that didn't bode very well for a lot of those employees, especially those employees, their spouses. And it got to be a really big deal, even made the newspaper. And within 11 days, the county realized, hey, we've got to do something here. Within 11 days, they went ahead and did an opportunity with VMware and Dell, from a work from home perspective with Workspace ONE, as well as Horizon. And they didn't go full jump in, put their boots in right at the very beginning. They started out with a quarter of their workforce first, and the opportunity led to, hey, every month or 2 months, we'll then add some additional employees at that point. But they saw the need. It was very quick. Same thing with the IRS from a government perspective. The IRS, sent all of their employees. They have 3 or 4 call centers across the United States, major call centers. They sent all their employees home right off the bat, as soon as this happened. But within 24 hours, they brought some of those folks back for some immediate training, for work from home and what they needed to do to get that done, whether they were using their own devices, company-owned devices, and now they've got at least 75% today of their workforce working from home as well. So, it's very easy for these priorities to change. And what I've been seeing a lot out there, especially not only those 2 options, but a lot of panic buying too. Businesses have closed. They've had to send folks home. Well, how do they keep generating revenue? So there was a lot of panic buying out there too. And because of that, we see a lot of companies out there, not just VMware and Dell and Xbyte here today, but a lot of companies getting out there trying to educate their customers. And that's basically what we're doing here today. Next slide, please. These are just some numbers that we see from a work from home perspective. And these numbers here were actually the same percentages even before the COVID-19 crisis, but these are some numbers that some of the companies were experiencing, as far as, hey, once they implemented a work from home, initiative, what did things look like from there? So they had 35 to 40% more productivity within their workforce. They had 40%, fewer quality defects, so better performance overall. 41% lower absenteeism. I've been working, I'm prior service, so when I say this, maybe it's me because it was built into me, and I'm retired Army, but lower absenteeism. When I've started working for Dell and for VMware, I don't think I've taken a day off, and I just love working from home. I've got my own schedule here, take care of business right here in my own home office. So a lot of this here really resonates with me as well. Turnover reduction has been lowered to only 12%. So because of their work from home initiatives, companies are able to, hold on to the great talent that they've hired, rather than seeing a turnover reduction or turnover increase. Because, if that same talent can get, another job where they're working from home with better flexible hours, they might take that jump and take that leap. So that's another reason here, not just COVID-19, but just another reason here. And then what does all this really result to? higher profitability, higher dollar signs, and revenue, incoming revenue for those companies. And before we go to the next slide, do we have any questions? What is the best way? Let's see here. What is the best way to license a VDI solution with Windows 10 Enterprise and Office? That could be a loaded answer, because what I'm about to show you today, is Workspace ONE. Some of the initiatives that we're working with other companies with Workspace ONE as well as Horizon. But some of these different solutions that I'm showing you today can also actually be licensed separately. So there are bundles that you can look at. All of them are compatible and integrated with Windows 10 environment. So for those of you that have already upgraded to Windows 10, this will resonate with you as well. For those of you that are still upgrading, these can still be used. But at least from a licensing perspective, I think it's all going to depend on what your approach is. Obviously, you'd love to just jump in with both feet and get everything you need on day one, but from a budget perspective, that may not be as logical as it sounds. So the licensing might be a little bit different, and I'll try to touch on that question too as we go through the different solutions here as well. Next slide. So where do we start? Usually the first thing that any VMware rep or Dell rep will tell you is, hey, we start with Workspace ONE, because Workspace ONE is what we use today here at VMware. All of our employees use it. At the merger back in 2016, Dell adopted it. They were using the Good app, I think, in the past for their email, and they were using all kinds of other different apps, to work in the field. But once the acquisition came over, Workspace ONE was it. But in reality, really what the central figure is that individual and their experience, their ability to really access their applications from anywhere, from any application, with any application, from any device. Whether it's a physical desktop or, for example, here at my home, I have my own personal cell phone, and through AirWatch, I'm able to use it personally, but then I also have another section here for just my work. I also have an iPad, which I use usually just for whiteboarding, but I could use it in the same fashion that I use my cell phone in. And then, of course, I've got my Dell laptop that they issued to me when I moved over from Dell to VMware. So I have 3 devices. But regardless of the device and regardless of how I'm using it, my experience is always the same. And that's what I hopefully will be able to show you with Workspace ONE today. And that's really what's important, that consistent experience that customers are, that your customers or that your end users have within their digital workspace. Next slide, please. So what is Workspace ONE? These here are the central components of Workspace ONE today. If you look internally to this slide here, you see Identity Broker. We have Workspace ONE Access, or formerly what you may have known it as Identity Manager. This is where we do the authentication with single sign-on. We have direct integration with things like Active Directory, Okta, any identity management that we can integrate with. It provided Horizon and Citrix integration. So this is one of those things where, maybe you're a Citrix customer. Well, will Workspace ONE integrate with that? Absolutely. If you look over there, over to the right, the user engagement. This is what I was talking about, at least from my perspective, when I'm accessing my applications on the different devices that I have. I want that consistent use. I want that consistent experience across all of my devices. So Workspace ONE is device agnostic. Whether you're using an iOS phone or an Android, Mac, iPad, PC, desktop, doesn't matter. We have an application store, which I basically go in. It's just a catalog, and I can go into that catalog, and the IT folks, they just go ahead and load those applications that I should have access to. Now, I don't use half of those. I probably only have 25 applications, and I made those my favorite. but I can go in there and every time, regardless of what device, I see those same 25 applications that I can get into. When we look below, things like if you're looking into a VDI opportunity, your virtual desktops and virtual applications, that's when we're looking at Horizon. Horizon is fully integrated with Workspace ONE here as well. And we're going to go into a few features that are embedded with Horizon today that I think you guys, some of you may know, I think based off of the poll that we had there earlier. But for those of you that don't, there's some really good features that we're going to go over here with Horizon in a little bit too. And then from a device management perspective, you see they're formerly called AirWatch or Workspace ONE. I just spoke to that a little bit ago. It's really cool, and I wish I could show it to you, but if I click on my phone and I bring it up, the first thing I see is my personal applications, things that I use just on a daily basis. Like whatever news channel I'm looking at or any other application that I've got here. But the other thing too is I at the very bottom, I can just hit the work tab, and once I hit the work tab, it automatically goes, I get a brand new browser, a Chrome browser just for work. I get the applications, my Workspace ONE application, so I can go ahead and access those 25 applications. And there really is a line between the two, between my personal use as well as my business use. So for those companies that are thinking, hey, do we implement like a bring your own device, or do you have to, maybe you call Xbyte. Xbyte's got some, huge warehouse guys that they have all of this Dell technology that they can put out there, whether it's laptops or whatnot, that they can put out there for you. So that's another thing too, where you send out laptops to those folks as well. So good information there as well. But that's your Workspace ONE platform. And for those of you that are interested, if you want a deeper dive or maybe a demo of that, you can reach out to Xbyte, and we'd be more than happy to go ahead and do that for you. Next slide, please. So VMware Horizon, the digital workspace. Go ahead and let's move to the next one here. So really, when we talk about Horizon, one of the things, at least from a sales and an engineering perspective, that we like to touch with customers is these 7 key pillars that we feel are most important to really give that full end user experience, especially from a VDI perspective. Whether we're looking at desktops and apps running from a single platform, or Jump Technologies, JMP, right there, the second one. That's really where we're going to hone in today. You pronounce that as Jump Technologies. That is actually a bundle of different solutions that we're going to talk about. I think I'm going to skip this great user experience because I'm going back to it, but then smart policies. How do I implement the different policies across end users or groups of end users? And how do I differentiate, let's say, different business units within there as well? And then the complete environment management. How does the IT folks on the other end, how are they managing all this? How is it an easy? Is it complex? What does it look like from that perspective? SDDC integration. Talked about that, I think, on the first slide about how some of the folks were on a journey to move to the SDDC platform, whether it be implementing an HCI solution with Dell Ready nodes that Xbyte technology is very good at doing today, or implementing just the regular software and setting a beginning foundation for that. And then flexible delivery, giving your IT folks the ability to, and the flexibility to really designate who gets what, how are they implemented, how do they work, how are these applications being used today. And when we wrap those 6 key pillars, that's really, I think, what provides the great user experience. And I touched on that a little bit. I can't touch on that, anymore, basically, because it's so important. When you saw the percentages, and I'm not a big percentage guy, but when you look at those percentages that I showed earlier about the increase in productivity, that's no joke. Employees and end users are much more productive when they get a consistent feel and look, and they don't have any ambiguity involved in it. That gives them that great experience. And to me, when I look at all 7 of these, the Jump Technologies is key. And that's why really I'm going to focus a lot on Jump Technologies here today in the next few slides. And Hey, please, if anybody has any questions at all, please let me know. Pop them in the chat there. I'll see it pop up, and as I go between slides, I'll make sure I look over. But let me know if you have any questions, and we'll see if we can't get them answered here for you. I'd like this to be as interactive as possible. Next slide, please. There we go. So enabling the digital workspace, this here again, now we talk about jump technologies and what that is, and I'm going to hone in on that on the very next slide. But this is kind of what I was talking about. You know, when we integrate Workspace ONE with Horizon on any app, any device, from any cloud, though they say. But when I say cloud, I mean whether it's on-prem or whether it's in the public cloud, from any platform, basically, and giving you that consistent feel and look. I'm not going to spend too much time on here, but really the big thing, the focus here is it's totally agnostic to any device and any cloud. Whether you're running on-prem, you know, you just saw here recently, we just made an announcement with GCP, AWS, and then Azure as well. And oh, by the way, IBM. So, you know, the 4 key cloud partners out there, we have partnerships with all of them. You know, and we're able to give a consistent feel and look, you know, at the end user perspective, no matter where we're accessing that from. Next slide, please. So, jump technologies, you know, what is it? This is really just a basic combination of 3 features that are very unique, but when, you know, individually, but when we bring them together, you know, to administer a VDI solution and present that user experience, it's awesome. You know, you look at app volumes and the ability to, you know, very quickly provision a desktop solution out there, or instant clones, the ability to do real-time application delivery. You know, that's reversed. Instant clones is the ultra-fast desktop provisioning. App volumes is real-time app delivery. We're going to talk about both of those very uniquely and what they are. And then how is all of that managed from a single solution as well? You know, as far as setting those policies, managing those users, that's where the user environment management comes in. You know, but with a combination of these instant clones, the app volumes, and then the VMware end user environment manager, you can really create any kind of disposable desktop that retains that, you know, user customizations or personas, and then any user installed applications from one session to another session, even though the cloned desktop is destroyed when the user comes out. And we can get deeper into how that actually works. But if you think about how things were done in the past with, like, you know, linked clones, I think was one, and then you had like full clones as well. You know, we'll get into cloning a little bit, but that's really where you're sharing disk and memory. But that's huge. But let's see. Let me see if we have any questions. Got one question here. How do I find tools or best practices on sizing VDI hosts, and how are desktops provisioned for, say, hundreds of users from an administrative level? Do I have to set them up one at a time? What about different types? That's a good question. So you do have different types of users. You have knowledge workers. You have power users. Maybe those power users are, you know, they need to have, you know, 3D video technology in that with a GPU series in there. From a sizing perspective, we could spend, you know, an entire session on sizing. But one of the good things we can do is, you know, now of course this depends on, you know, how much information you know about those users. You know, if it's an existing environment today, we can of course use Dell Technologies Live Optics. We get some real-time empirical data to really size for something like that, at least from an infrastructure perspective. And when we do that, when we size for it, whether it's implemented or not, the more information you have about those individual users, knowledge workers or power users, the more information you have about them, the better, because when we size it, we'll put in there, there's a standard version of, let's say, hey, what is a knowledge user? How are they configured today? Maybe 2 virtual CPUs and 8 gigs of memory for each. And maybe a high-end power user, there are 4 virtual CPUs and 16 gigs of memory each. And oh, by the way, we need a CPU. And with CPU technology today and how we virtualize that, you have a lot of flexibility on which users are using that resource as well. So it really depends on that, but that's a good question. We need as much information about that, about those end users as possible. And a lot of times, if it's a greenfield environment, that's really hard to come by. It's hard to size for something that you don't know what's out there. But if you do know, hey, let's say they're just knowledge workers, they're not going to be using, 3D lines or anything like that, 3D video. They're just basic knowledge workers, files and stuff like that. We have a basic, spreadsheet that we can use from and say, hey, this is what we see across the industry, and we can tweak that on either side, whether it's power users or knowledge workers. But the other good thing too, especially if you're looking at implementing an HCI solution, for example, through vSAN or any HCI solution for that matter, but specifically, let's say with XByte technologies and the ready nodes that they put out there, we can actually size that according to these numbers that I'm talking about. But when we size it, we're always going to go with a standard 20% increase in resources for you, and you have flexibility to say, hey, that sounds good, but let's go to 25, or let's implement a 30% increase here just to be safe. And you have to weigh those options between the budget and stuff like that. But I hope that answers your question. If not, put in something else there if I missed anything. Next slide, please. Instant clone technology. This is what I was talking about, like before, where in the old time when we first started VDI, we had full clones. Horizon was using full clones. VDI was using full clones. And full clones were really that share nothing cloning technology. And then we implemented, or what was released after that was linked clones. And linked clones was, a lot less storage, a lot more efficient. And it shared. The main difference was it was taking a snapshot and it was sharing that disk out. But then we've got instant cloning technology. And instant cloning technology takes that gold master image and it's sharing that disk and its memory. So a lot more efficient from that perspective. But it really does improve and accelerate the process of creating that cloned VM. Over its predecessor of linked clones before. And like I said, it requires less storage and it's less expensive to manage as well and update those desktops. Because if you think about it, every time a user logs off, that VM is destroyed. But then once the actual user logs back in, it's as if nothing ever happened. Everything that they had saved before any of their applications all come back based off of that master image. So the technology is very fast from an instant cloning to, it's within seconds. It's crazy fast based off of that master image that we have. But again, that's what's giving that ideal user experience, that simplified desktop administration from an IT perspective, and then higher performance. I didn't mention this, but the VM4 technology that we use. This is older technology that we've just over the years have increased and added to, through R&D and improved upon. And through that VM4 technology, we've been able to implement this very quickly. But I don't want to just leave it at that, though, because remember, I said in the beginning, the jump technologies. Jump technologies is nothing when you don't implement an integration between instant clones and app volumes. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So, and if we could build this out a little bit, just go ahead and build out the next one there for me. So it's giving you what, from an app volume perspective, what it was looking like from a traditional perspective and how the OS was tied to the applications, the user data files and the settings and all of that. But then we were able, everything is distributed nowadays, and so we were able to separate a lot of those applications and those user files, separate those from the OS file there. And what this really app volumes does is it's real-time application delivery and lifecycle management. IT, the IT folks, administrator, can use these app volumes really to deliver applications to end users without even compromising their experience. Whether it's, while they're logged in or if they're logged off, of course you can do that. But even while they're logged in, if you needed to add some additional applications, you could do so while they're logged in. Doesn't affect their experience at all from that perspective. You get full integration with platforms here like App Volumes. Well, like I said in the beginning, this will work with Citrix Zen App, Citrix Zen Desktop, as well as Microsoft Remote Desktop Session, the RDSH as well. So very, very integrated with those as well. Now, what does this do though from a benefit perspective? How does this benefit, let's say, both you and the end user? I think the benefit, of course, is more towards leaning towards the IT folks, because really you're giving a persistent desktop in a non-persistent environment. That's where we get to the point with the instant clones. When you bring those together with app volumes and the ability for the user to log off and kill that application, only for them to log back on and re-bring it back up just like they did in the past. Multiple applications can be assigned to an app stack. So if you had, maybe you've got your core applications in one app stack, and then you've got another app stack, let's say with new modern applications today. If you're using Kubernetes or something like that, you actually have that as well. But within those app stacks, even though you're adding multiple applications to that app stack, you still have application isolation within each app stack themselves, simply by using ThinApp. What we use to do that, to isolate them, is using ThinApp technology that we have here. And then real-time provisioning of applications to either users, groups, different computers, or even organizational units. I think I'm about to talk about it here in a bit, but I'll mention it now just because there is full integration with Active Directory. So those of you that are using Active Directory or Okta or some other form, we can pull in those groups, those end users, or how you have them grouped out, and assign the different policies to each of those as well. Now, the other thing that you're going to see here is the writable volume. This here is the important piece, because remember I said every time a user logs off, that VM is kind of destroyed and killed. Well, how is it though that once they log back in, all of their data, their other applications are brought up, and it's through this writable volumes piece that we have here. The writable volumes kind of performs a similar function to app stacks for that user application data, which allows users to access that data across any session and across any device. And let's see, let me see if we have any questions. Where are the user data files stored using the just-in-time app model? So you must be one of the ones that actually put in there, maybe you're an expert, because that's a very good question versus the traditional model. I think I just answered that for you in writable volumes. That is where the user data files are stored for that. If I didn't answer that, or you'd like me to expand on that anymore if we need to, throw that back in there, but I think I just answered that. Next slide, please. Complete application lifecycle management. I just got done talking about that basically. App volumes can simplify your VDI and your RDSH application lifecycle management in one place. You can combine your core apps into a single app stack, making it really easy for those users via the Active Directory. But keep in mind, you can have several app stacks, and then you have that writable volumes piece as well. So you can have your core apps in one app stack and your other applications in another, but you're still going to manage them through that single store here through the LCM, the lifecycle management piece as well. You can also just as easily really manage any line of business or departmental apps by combining those together into a single app stack if you need to. Because keep in mind, maybe you have a business development unit that is going to be using both core apps and maybe some other modern apps or what you have out there. You can still combine them in a single app stack and just use the ThinApp application thin app technology in there to isolate them as well. So really good information there too. Good stuff. No more questions. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, there you go. Just brought up the core apps as well. So Blast Extreme, what is this? It's a new VMware controlled protocol. It's a display protocol that's built by VMware, delivering that feature-rich experience to end users. So, I talked a little bit, somebody had the question about some different end users. Don't confuse this though with, GP. This of course certainly enhances that, but this is good for all types of users, whether it's the knowledge workers or even the power users that have a need for GPU. The other thing I want to throw out there too is you may have power users that still don't need GPU as well. So just because I'm calling them a power user doesn't automatically assume that they need GPU. There are power users out there that aren't using GPU, but our Blast Extreme technology is included with VMware Horizon 7. So regardless of what licensing you get, this will be included with that. And again, it's just a display protocol that was designed by VMware to implement that for you. And I think I got one more slide. Next slide, please. This is just the next slide here. This is just I just wanted to throw this out there from an architecture perspective so you can kind of see what this looks like. If you start there at the very bottom, most conversations, we like it to start at the infrastructure piece where, if you have the ability to implement an HCI solution, that's probably ideal. Does it have to be a HCI solution? Absolutely not. If you're already invested, let's say, in the traditional technology, the older 321 still, and you're still trying to get that return on investment, that certainly works as well. But creating that foundation with your vSphere, vSAN, and NSX, everything software defined, that is ideal. Can you have, let's say, vSphere and not the others and still run this? Sure can. But when we're talking to customers that are, moving through that journey, of course, we're going to talk about HCI and how that works from that perspective. But that's really a good foundation. And then when you look here, you see some different things like on the left-hand side, the VMware Identity Manager, or, what is now actually called the Workspace ONE Access. That's where Workspace ONE is sitting, that give those end users access to Horizon 7. You'll see the Unified Access Gateway, the connection servers are there. Somebody asked the question about Windows 10, 3D desktops, instant cloning. You can create different pools for that. Maybe you've got some Linux boxes and Windows boxes. You want to go ahead and tag those in vSphere as silver and gold and create a virtual desktop pool for that. Certainly can do that as well. And then you see your app volumes up there where I talked about where you can put multiple applications within an app stack as well in there. On the far right-hand side, you'll see the core infrastructure. Things that I didn't really talk a lot about today, but your vRealize Operations Manager for Horizon, if you wanted to be able to monitor, the usage of your end users, vRealize Operations Manager is great. Somebody asked a question about sizing. Hey, maybe this is that greenfield environment, and we put some numbers out there to get you started. Well, how do I monitor that? Hey, some of these end users, how are they functioning with that sizing that we did? Is everything good? Can we reclaim some of that, or do we need to go ahead and add some additional resources to it? That vRealize Operations Manager for Horizon is a great piece. And then, of course, the other core foundation pieces, vCenter Server, Database SQL, and Active Directory as well. Can you touch on security features? Would we still need to run VPN with Workspace ONE, for example? You certainly could still run VPN with this as well, but yes, there are other options out there too that you can run. I think in a later slide at the very end when Ben gets to it, you'll see a slide where we're also using an SD-WAN piece as well that has some security features in there. There are already security features built in to this solution, like in the VMware Workspace ONE platform, for example. We have what's called the Trust Network. So I have that when I look at, when I told you on my phone, when I go from my private personal options over to the work option, every one of those applications have a little lock on it. And my phone, it's using that security or that trust network that I have. But even within Horizon itself, there's some security features there that have already been built in with vSphere, whether it's encryption, data at rest, or data in flight, that's included. What I will talk about, though, from a security perspective, and some of the things that we're doing now, if you haven't heard, we had just recently, within the last 6 months, I think, acquired Carbon Black. And before our acquisition, from a security perspective, we, like I said, everybody before COVID-19, the big thing was security. How do we keep everything secure, and still run efficiently? Now it's, hey, how do I get folks to run and work at home and still keep things secure? We are implementing a lot of that Carbon Black technology into these solutions today. We've already done it with Workspace ONE, so some of that Carbon Black technology is already integrated with that trust network and just enhancing what we already have. But then also, too, every other layer of the stack, whether it's at the vSAN, vSphere, NSX, as well, that's included there for you from that perspective. I hope that answered your question. Security, we can get into another, that's like a sizing discussion. That's very similar to that anyway. We can have another discussion, 30 to 40 minutes, just on security alone. But look into Carbon Black, look into some of the things we're doing, reach out to XByte or your Dell Technology folks, and we can certainly talk about some of the different security options there for you as well.
All right,
any other
thank you,
questions
Larry.
here? Cool.
Go
If there
ahead
are any
and
other questions, I'll still be here.
yeah, we're going to go ahead and drop in another poll real quick before we transition to the hardware portion of this. So let's go ahead and take 60 seconds. We'll drop that poll in, and then before we start the next session, we'll take a few questions as well.
While you guys are doing that poll, looks like we might have another question here. What is a typical VDI physical structure resources layout data center, like for a company in a hub and spoke site-to-site VPN configuration with remote sites and about 900 users and 1,200 devices? I'm guessing because you said physical, we're talking about the hardware, what type of hardware you would implement. And I think Ben is about to get into stuff like that. So I don't want to steal his thunder, but XByte Technologies does an awesome job from a vSAN ready node perspective. They've got their own sales team. They've got their own engineers that can come in and size this for you. So if you are looking for a solution and hey, how do I set that foundation from a physical piece? Hold that question, because I think Ben is going to touch on that a little bit here for you.
Okay, we've closed the poll. Thank you, Larry. So yeah, moving into the hardware side of things, Dell Technologies has a whole suite of integrated solutions for VDI. It's going to range from vSAN ready nodes, as we've discussed. And we'll get into some turnkey solutions that also that Dell also has called VxRail. All of this, as you can see, vSAN here, vSphere, and Horizon would be really the foundation for a complete VDI solution. And then moving even further than that, you can virtualize networking with their NSX product as well. And the whole idea, the big thrust for VMware is to help you create a software-defined data center. The VMware Cloud Foundation basically wraps that into an easy-to-manage solution. So talking about VMware vSAN with Horizon, if you're not familiar with vSAN, vSAN basically does similar to what I would say VMware does for a single host. That single host, it basically helps you, allocate a little bit of CPU towards an application, maybe a portion of memory and storage, networking resources, etc. Think of this like that, only across an entire stack of server nodes. It's going to abstract all of those resources, create data protection using software um, rather than using things like traditional hardware RAID. And it's going to create a very resilient stack for you to run all of your applications on. It also folds the storage piece, where in a traditional setup you would have servers and storage networked to, say, a SAN, and it basically moves the storage internal into those nodes. This alone increases performance dramatically. The data no longer has to cross, over SAS, fiber channel, or iSCSI pathways. It's very close to the CPU in a cluster. It also does not require a dedicated switch fabric either, which is another thing that actually saves you some headaches from a management and cost perspective. The nice part about it is that you can scale up vSAN by adding drives or memory, and then if you need more CPU, you can and more disk, and you've maxed out the nodes you have, you can scale out by adding additional nodes. So it is a very elastic, easy, pay as you grow uh, setup, which will definitely lower your costs. I would say you're going to spend money slowly over time with vSAN, as opposed to having massive cash outlays every 3 to 5 years trying to replace a traditional infrastructure. Management does become much easier for sure. So quantifiable savings for vSAN running Horizon will be cost of PC replacements. You can transition to thin clients, notebooks, and even some companies even do BYOD that run Workspace ONE. IT support cost savings are going to decrease from fewer problems and faster problem resolution. Your help desk will thank you. If you are the help desk, you'll thank yourself. You do have improved worker productivity due to reduced PC downtime and greater desktop mobility. Think about this aspect: when you run VDI, all the data is centrally saved. You don't have corporate data saved on a laptop or a device that, God forbid, gets left in an airport. So another thing to think about. Power savings from thin clients. They don't take as much power as a desktop. And of course, storage savings with the virtual SAN. Having the storage in the servers as opposed to paying for expensive proprietary disk, and dealing with a lot greater, higher maintenance costs for operating a SAN. Your staff efficiency due to faster move, add, delete. Larry went through a lot of that with how efficient it is to provision desktops to your users. Other savings you'd see would be, or other benefits you would see would be improved data and endpoint security, as I mentioned. The case of the laptop left in the airport, I've heard that too many times to seems it's a popular occurrence. Not lately with no business travel, but in the past I've heard that one a lot. Better business continuity and disaster recovery, enhanced business agility, easier to outsource projects. And then of course, if you're familiar with VMware, you know that this is an on-ramp to the cloud. This is going to take you from a on-prem to a hybrid cloud solution much quicker. So there's a lot of similarities between vSAN ready nodes and VxRail appliances. vSAN ready nodes are built on Dell PowerEdge servers. These are, of course, configured to order, and then licensing is purchased from VMware. The alternative is VxRail, which is a turnkey solution. The management's a little bit different. It is a little bit different overlay, and the way that it's ordered and supported is a little different. In the case of VxRail, it's you're dealing with Dell EMC for the duration of your ownership, and it's a single vendor solution. We'll call it the easy button in a way. Okay, VMware Cloud Foundation with Horizon, integrated software-defined data center platform. Um, Obviously, we talked about this earlier. I touched on the fact that networking, storage, compute, virtual desktop, that we can define everything via software now. It's going to simplify management. It's going to make cloud integration much easier, quicker, more efficient. It has end-to-end integrated security. Obviously, there's best of breed VDI stack. All of this has been proven to work together and validated to work together, designed to work together. That's the benefit of dealing with VMware and Dell. They're all part of the same Dell Technologies family. You're not dealing with multiple OEMs. You're really dealing with one company. Obviously, the speed of deployment, we talked about that a little bit during Larry's presentation. 6 to 8 times faster on average. So very easy to set up and get up and running on. And this is talking about Horizon with VMware Cloud Foundation on VxRail. This is basically showing you how VMware Cloud Foundation will automate deployment of Horizon infrastructure. No more manual processes. Basically gives you a lot faster deployment and reduces your complexity. You can standardize environments, scale rapidly, gives you more time for value add tasks as opposed to manually configuring systems, desktops, that type of thing. You can see through here we have a sequence of events: install your Horizon software, configure your environment, provision infrastructure resources, automated Horizon deployment, automated date to scale. All within hours, not days. Okay, so the Dell Technologies Cloud Platform for VDI subscription details do have a cloud consumption model. We aren't going to talk much about that today. Not really what we're focused on. And let's see here. I want to make sure we're coming up on the hour, so I don't want to take too much time to get to where we don't have time to get to questions. So I'm actually going to speed ahead here. If anyone has any questions on this, we'll have our contact information at the end that you can contact us and ask questions on that subscription model. Last slide here basically is showing VMware Horizon access to physical desktop infrastructure. You can see, I know we had a question earlier about hub and spoke. I'll probably take that one offline as well. And definitely would love to have a deeper discussion on that project. But basically this is just showing you how we have SD-WAN edge appliances, which Dell recently launched, and these do run VMware under the covers. This is actually running VMware VeloCloud, which is their software-defined SD-WAN product. In the case of Edge, they actually put that in a small appliance, and there are, I believe, I want to say there's 7 different models of those size for different use cases, different size organizations, everything down to a very small robo. I guess could even be used for single user, but probably not. Be down to a small robo all the way up to large corporate headquarters. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get to the end here because we are running right out of time. All right, well, I appreciate everybody coming today. Wanted to make sure that we have one more poll we're going to drop in, and then I'm going to give everybody about 60 seconds to go ahead and get that done right now. And then please ask your questions. We're here for a few more minutes and would love to answer any questions that you have. So I'll give everybody about 30 seconds or so to answer those. All right. We'll be closing the poll here in just a few more seconds. Okay. One other question was related to sizing uh, vSAN ready nodes. We actually covered this in a webinar not too long ago, and there are links on our website that I will have uh, uh, Lindsay or somebody include, where you can go ahead and download Live Optics and run that in your current environment or on current, if you want to run it on current desktops. That would be a great tool to use, as Larry mentioned earlier, to help us get a look at your environment, to explain Live Optics. Live Optics used to be called DPAC, which stood for Dell Performance Analysis Collection Kit, which is what it does. It's basically going to aggregate performance metrics from like your CPU, memory, network, disk environment. So it's going to measure things like how much read-write ratio, average IOPS, peak IOPS, how much net CPU, peak CPU, how much memory, how much peak memory utilization. That information is really valuable when purchasing new hardware. It really helps you spend and invest your money where it's going to do you the most good. We've seen situations where in the past, without that tool, folks will buy, crazy CPUs and not enough memory or something like that, and didn't put the money in the right, invest their money in the right places, and ended up having to spend more money down the road to correct that that misstep at the time of initial purchase. Okay, let me take a look here. All right. So it looks like we've got some folks that want some swag out there. Um, we have Lindsay will take care of that, I'm sure. Just make sure that you include all of your contact info. Let's see. Okay, looks like we have some folks that are looking for one-on-one demos, others that would like to do hands-on lab. We can provide links to the hands-on lab. VMware has a hands-on lab portal. We'll definitely grab some links to that and direct you to the right location. And then others of you have mentioned that you are interested in you have some non-VDI related projects. So we'll be definitely in contact. Appreciate everybody's time and attendance today. If you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out. All of our contact information is located on the screen. Thank you very much.